Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I'm Patty.
I'm Carrie.
And we are here to answer questions about DIY and painting. So whatever questions you have, make sure you pop anything down below and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah.
And in this case, we had a whole bunch.
We had a whole bunch from our, I think it was May 28th, 2024. I will share that link with you guys. It was a really great lesson on using rollers. And we had a lot of questions on using rollers, and then we started to have a lot of questions on some other topics. And so we wanted to make sure that we answered those questions. And sometimes it's an easy answer that we can pop into the comments, but sometimes it's nice to take some time to think about it.
And there's depth of interesting things to know about. I think it's super important that you guys get like the full visual, the full answer. Sometimes the answer could be yes or no, but usually it's like, yes, if this. I feel like we do one of those if this, then that kind of moments, like we're coding life or something. But yeah, so we want you to have all the knowledge you can. That's why we're here, to make painting easy for you and pleasurable and wonderful.
Yeah. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are typically live on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch. And then on Saturdays, we release videos on YouTube that are specific techniques or projects or something we just really want you to learn about.
Yeah. Yeah, in the Saturday lessons, please remember that Saturday is for us to teach techniques. And we use a project to teach the technique. But just because I used, gray and Ohio State colors for this football welcome sign doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing. Like you can just learn about T-tail stripes.
Yeah, even if you're not painting for football, the drop shadow and especially the T-tail stripe lesson here is stripes are hard to paint.
Yeah,
and
they are.
Especially on a big project.
Yes. The bigger the stencil gets, the more open it gets, and then it becomes difficult to do, but we show you how to do it the easiest way possible.
And we typically, with those videos, I try to make sure that we're putting the technique or lesson in the title and in the description. And you can also, when you go into the description, scroll down, and we have it all time-stamped, so you can look at specifically what we are talking about. So different lessons, whether it be base coating or drop shadowing or painting stripes or varnishing, you'll be able to see those. So if there is something specific that you want to see if it's in the video, then you can go do that.
Yeah, I wish, like all Dickens, that Google or YouTube would make it easier to scroll with your finger back and forth. So the timestamps is the best thing to use because you just go click right there and it'll do the thing.
And if you see a lot of chunks on your timeline when you are watching the video, we have had someone comment before and say, why do you have 17 ads? They are not 17 ads. We had 17 different topics that we discussed. So when you put in a timestamp, it makes it into a little chunk. And so then you can kind of scroll through the chunks to see what that is.
And you know when they stop and start and all of that. One last thing, make sure that you go to StudioR12.com and sign up for our newsletter because that is going to tell you all the goods are there. You're going to get notified when we have new product. You're going to get notified when we have new techniques. You're going to get notified when Carrie or one of us has a wonderful idea to blog about or something like that. So if you love painting, then you make sure that you sign up for that because there's all kinds of goods there.
Agreed. All right, are we ready to start?
We're ready. Okay, I'm in the hot seat.
Okay, Patty's in the hot seat today. So our first question comes from Lori, and Lori says, it seems that on smaller stencils, I have a problem with bleeding under. Is it because of using the smaller dome brush?
Okay, so we have a little ugly sweater stencil. Sorry. And so I've got a couple of small brushes. I tend not to use the small brushes on too many things. If I'm trying to get in there and just highlight just a little bit, I'll do that. I think the main problem, who was it? Was it Lori?
Lori.
Okay. So Lori, the main problem I see all the time is that not enough offloading time is being spent. So when you have a smaller brush, I think what happens with the smaller brushes is people feel like, one little swipey poo is going to be like enough offloading. And you have to do as much offloading as you do with one of the bigger brushes. So even though you have a small brush and a small amount of paint, you should absolutely spend time here. If you are bleeding under, it is because of the paper towel. Not enough paper towel interface. So you want to do that. And then, of course, then you can swirl as well. I think swirling is, and that swirling is never with, I'm going to do a demonstration here. Swirling is never this, okay? It is just the tip of the brush touching, and then you'll get a soft look. So if you add pressure when you are swirling, let's go back here, and let me just really swirl on him just a little bit. Now I offloaded really well, so I don't know that I'll get any bleeding under. No, I didn't get any. So because I spent time here. So it's always when you are on your paper towel, if you normally do 5 swirls to wipe off your paint, try going up to 8 and 10 and 15. So that's the key to small stencils. And you could use a big brush with your small stencils as well. So, and then what I find is it really does, I guess, just makes it a faster action. So that just does that. And if you are stippling, try not to go so hard. So if you are just really pouncing, so when I stipple, I really do not like to stipple. When I do stippling, I do light. So you can hear the difference between this. Ready? So much different. I'm just bouncing up and down onto the snowflake here instead of pounding on there. I know a lot of people that like to pound when they stipple, and that will wear you out, and it will also, it'll just wear you out.
Yeah. Well, and so a couple of things. I typically don't use the smaller brushes unless I'm changing colors. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to do all green for that or green for the top, and then that's kind of in a big chunk. So if I'm going to do all the same color, I will typically use a bigger brush still just to cover more. But I love to stipple. I don't typically stencil on smaller stencils like that have a lot of intricate details because it's harder to get the paint into the nooks and crannies. When you're swirling, it will go into those corners, and then you can swirl one way and then swirl the other way to make sure that it's all covered.
Yeah. And then the little brushes, let me hit these guys back on here. I can't line it up. That's just I see what I did wrong. Okay, I had the wrong deer. Oh dear. Okay, something that I like to do with the little brushes is shade and highlight. So and I'm still wiping off a lot on my paper towel. So if I get this lined up, say I want these little deer to have a little ombre going on their feet, if I have to isolate a color, then I will use a little brush. And so then that will give me a nice little shading effect. So this is a control brush, not necessarily, I guess, I don't even know if you would need to, I think you could, because of the dome brushes, I think the big ones would get in these little tiny holes just as good as anything. So these are not because of a small stencil, these are for control.
Yes, in small areas. I like
or
flowers.
Tight areas.
Yes, like painting multiple colors and flowers is where we typically grab those. Also, when you are using small stencils, don't forget you still want to tape it down. There are a lot of times that you're thinking, well, it's just small and I'm not going to have it on here for a while and I can hold it. And if you tape it down, it's going to secure it to your surface. So a reason that you might bleed under is if your stencil's not secure, and then it could be floppy one way or the other from your surface. And then if there's space between your surface and your stencil, then your brush can go under there. But even when Patty was doing that, where she was just doing her shading, she was still holding onto it as well.
Yeah, you definitely secure your stencil. And then, I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you hold, your hands sweat, or, you might have lotion on them, or, something like that. And then when you have been holding it, it'll lift off with your hand. Yeah. And so I do a little graceful, like hold it down with the fingernail, move my hand off so that I can still keep it in its position. So 2 little pieces of tape is way awesome insurance. to do that. Yeah, and then if you have your little tiny brush, pull you back out of the water, and you wanted to maybe make all of these light green, you would use a tiny brush for doing tight things, or get out your multi-masker, which could be like you could stick that wherever you didn't want your color if you wanted to use a bigger brush. So those are some ways that you can control, but always, I think it's the paper towel that's the problem for the bleeding under, I think for everybody.
Yeah.
And then it never have water in your brush either.
Yep.
So, okay, next
right.
question.
Next question. So during our May 28th, 2024 lesson about rollers, you painted ombre, which is in front of you, and you showed how to do it with a roller with 2 colors. So we had a couple of questions. Debbie asked, do you only use 2 colors for ombre? And then Lori asked, could you add a 3rd color?
So that's a really, really great question. So the colors that I used were 51 and 43. And I'm going to get out a very separated bottle of 54. Give it a good shaky, shaky, shaky. So I'm going to show you a couple techniques. You could triple load your roller, but the minute you start walking, so I started in the corner and then started walking down the piece. As soon as you start walking down, you're going to make everything into mud.
Yeah.
So you can't really do it as a roller ombre, but you can, after you're dry, you can pick up a brush. And we've got one of our jumbo brushes. If you don't have one of these, you need at least one. They are magic for doing your background techniques and that kind of thing. So I'm going to start with the dark. And so once again, I'm spending time on my paper towel. This is really important for this technique because I need it to blend. So say I wanted to deepen this corner, the corners of my piece. I can go right there in that very corner, and then I can start adding a deeper ombre right in the corner. Lots of wiping off. Notice I'm really going at that. You spend almost more time wiping off your brush than you do painting sometimes. So I can just tuck this right into these corners. See what a great job of doing a big blend. This is really hard to do if you don't have a brush like this. And we had this designed for us because I know why we need it. So now that just adds that little bit of darker, and deepness to my colors. So I'm going to pop this in the water and get another one, and we can add a highlight color. Okay, and your highlight's going to be interesting because it's really easy to make a bullseye. So a lot of times I like to have a destination in mind. Let me get out a stencil. I picked all the words ones. Okay, so I will pick some wine. Let's have some wine. Okay. If you haven't seen this, this is our disc binder method of storing stencils. So we've got them sorted by themes, and it's super important to be able to find your stencils when you need them. Okay, so if I have my stencil and I know it's going to be right there in the middle, or if I'm going to move and make my words repeat, then I'll get that set up. So now I see I've got my dark around here. Maybe I want some of that light right in the middle, and maybe I want it to kind of have some movement. So now I have a direction. I know where I'm going, and I know how I'm going to get there. So instead of I'm going to pick on the back of this. Instead of just building your color like right there, smack dab in the middle, which is going to give you a bullseye. Sometimes it's really hard to manage to get it to flow out. What I like to do is create something with movement. So wipe, because I'm about to go right smack in the middle of this lovely ombre project. So I might go a little bit lighter and move around in like swirls. A little bit of X's, and just kind of start drawing down a highlight down through the middle of the board, just giving it a dreaminess, something in the background that's going to just totally add some charm to this. And then I can make everything a little bit wider if I want it to. You want to stay out of your dark areas. Okay, and then just start building it wider. So if you don't like the look of the unevenness, you can go back in, give it a blow dry, because wet paint attacks wet paint, like it's attracted to each other. So wet likes wet. A wet washcloth will do a better job of absorbing a spill than a dry cloth. So always give it a little blow dry. Okay, one last little wipe, and then we can go back and we can be like, okay, let's make that be a little bit less splotchy. And so see how that's just making it more solid. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 attempts at your destination to get there. And then when I lay my stencil on top, my stencil is going to just be, this will be masked sort of by what I've got going on top of it. So that's why I needed to know like what I was going to do on top. And I can just draw that down, widen it out. Sneak up into my dark area with very faded paint. Sneak down into my dark area. So I got a little bit of a question mark kind of look here. And then if I wanted to embellish on top of this and make it even a little bit more, I could go into the middle of this area. I would hit it with a blow dryer, and then I could pick up a little bit of white in with my sage green, and I could increase right in that middle area if I wanted to increase that little movement and stuff. I could also go over to the sides and just create different pockets of interest if I wanted to move that around a little bit and have just motion in the background.
All right.
Dun, dun, dun. Such good questions.
Very good questions. Okay, you don't have to paint for this one.
Okay.
How do you clean the Mylar sheets that we use as palette?
Okay.
Do you use soap on them?
Yes, you can absolutely. We have covered this. Now, did we have these for the how to wash brushes? I don't think we did.
Nope, not for either our wash brushes or our wash stencils.
So what you do with the, you do this exactly like washing stencils. So you could actually just watch the how to wash stencils video and that will show you. But I would wipe off the excess paint. And then at your sink, you can use hot water. You can soak it in a little bucket of some hot soapy water. Then you can use a little scrubby, scratchy thing if you need to. But it comes off pretty easily if you soak it just for a hot minute. And that's how you clean your water.
Okay. Thank you. And that question was from Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy.
All right, our next question is from Janice. So in the May 28th video, you showed varnishing with a roller, and that you get the roller wet before you varnish. So her question is, if you're using another type of applicator to varnish, do you wet it? So if you're going to use a sponge or if you're going to use a brush, do you wet those?
Yeah, so if you were using a foam brush, a sponge, or a brush, I would normally use an oval glaze. It's way over there.
I think we have them all washed.
Okay, so if I'm varnishing, a lot will depend on my temperature, and a lot will depend on the size of my project. If I'm, doing varnish on something this size, I probably would not wet it at all. If I needed to varnish something like this, where it's big, if I get in there and I'm doing this with my foam brush, this is going to start drying and sticking before I get across the thing, and get up here as well. So then I would do just like the trick we did on, what was the date for the one?
The May 28th, 2024.
May 28th, 2024, that live video. I show this technique, which is you mist here to just pick up. I don't have a sink right here in our filming room, but I can just pick up just a little bit, squish that out, and then when I'm applying my varnish, I'll pick up my varnish, and then it'll help keep everything from drying right away. And I would do the same with this and the same with this if I was to pick up just a little teeny bit of water and then my varnish, and then go from there.
Good deal. All right. Good question, Janice. Thank you. Okay. we have one more question.
Dun,
Please
dun,
make
dun.
sure to ask your questions below because what you want to know, someone else probably wants to know too.
Yeah, exactly. Like these are all great questions.
Yeah. Okay, so Kelly is also discussing varnishing. She said when we've previously talked about varnishing, we talked about maybe putting on 3 layers of varnish when you finish your project. But if you want to wax after you varnish for a little bit more protection, do you use multiple layers of wax or just 1 layer of wax?
Okay, so Kelly, I'm super impatient. So you'll see me if I'm making an heirloom. I made a lace dressed teddy bear box, big box for my daughter-in-law for a wedding gift. And she's a teddy bear fanatic. She, at the time, the lace was like the thing to do. And so, I mean, I worked my tail off on that box. So once I got it finished and I knew it was going to be a keepsake for her life, I made sure 3 coats of varnish, you do the wax on top. You could do 1 coat of wax, 2 coats of wax, whatever is your preference. You'll get a feel, like literally the touch feel, and you'll be like, oh, I'm there.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And then don't forget that you can use the 1000 grit or the brown paper bag in between your coats of varnish, and not the wax necessarily, but that will help make that varnish coat so slick and smooth, and it's just amazing. Really a good heirloom thing. If I was going to put a tall porch sign outside, I would do 3 coats of wax. Roller my polyurethane. Thank you. And I always do matte for outdoor projects because the sunlight and the lights of your house will reflect on the thing and you won't be able to see what the art is.
Yeah, if you use gloss.
Yeah, and then with your wax, you can reapply it. Like, so say in a year, maybe you've had thunderstorms going every day and your porch sign is getting a little bit ragged looking or something. You can give it a quick little sand and then you can reapply your wax coat just right on top. So,
all right.
Yeah. All right.
Good deal. We've answered all of our questions that we had.
You guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure to put your alarm on for Tuesdays at noon, and we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Have a great day.